Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another EarthEcho STEMExplore virtual career connection. Today, we are featuring Carly Jackson. My name is Casey. I'm a programs manager here at EarthEcho International, and I will be co-hosting today's live event. Now, I do want to mention, while EarthEcho fully supports Blackout Tuesday, we acknowledge the inspiration was not to silence Black voices. So that is exactly why we have kept on schedule and why we want you to hear from Carly Jackson today. We're so excited for her to share her story and her experiences in her STEM career. And just a reminder, there's a lot of people online today, so let's all please be respectful. Also, please, if we experience any technical issues, hang tight and just stand by with us, and we will resume as quickly as we can. And also, this event is being recorded and will be available for playback right on EarthEcho International's YouTube channel, as well as our STEMExplore website. So, EarthEcho has reached more than 2 million people in 146 countries, providing original content and immersive experiences with trusted resources that are free of charge for youth and their educators and community leaders who work with them. Now, today we are joined by one of our exceptional young leaders. Her name is Akila, and she's going to help me moderate today's live event. So I'd like to introduce Akila for just a moment. Akila is a recent graduate. Congratulations, Akila. Basis Phoenix in Phoenix, Arizona. Akila believes one of the most effective ways young people can get involved in their community and begin discussions is through art. Akila hopes her artivism conveys the necessity of climate justice and further action amongst communities. So Akila, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Casey. We're so excited to have students from all over the globe joining us as we learn about exciting and sustainable careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. Just personally, I've been really looking forward to this, so yeah, I'm really excited. And this live event is part of STEMExplore. So this is EarthEcho's program that brings inspiration to life by telling the stories of dynamic female professionals in STEM careers during live career connections. And we wanted to thank our founding sponsor, Raytheon Technologies, for their support of women in STEM. And just a quick little reminder that you can send in questions anytime. If you are in the Zoom, please use the Q&A feature. And if you're watching on YouTube, please use the chat space and feel free to start typing questions as they arise, and we'll be sure to answer those as we go along. So now let's get started. I'm super excited and proud to introduce today's STEMExplore mentor, Carly Jackson. Hi, Carly. So I wanted to briefly introduce her. Carly Jackson received her Bachelor's of Science in Biology at Florida Atlantic University in 2016, where she was a graduate student pursuing her Master's in Marine Biology at Nova Southeastern University, where she's completing research on the effects of provisioning tourism on nurse sharks in Belize. She is also a marine turtle specialist at Gumbo Limbo Nature Center, conducting sea turtle nesting surveys along Boca Raton beaches, as well as assisting with medical procedures and husbandry in the Sea Turtle Rehabilitation Center. She's originally from Detroit, Michigan, and then moved to South Florida during her undergrad studies. When she had some free time, she likes to go scuba diving or snorkeling at nearby reefs and wrecks. Without further ado, Carly, please take it away.
Thanks, Akila. Hi, everyone. My name is Carly. Akila, you did an awesome introduction. I'm just going to tell you guys about what I do at Gumbo Limbo, what I'm doing with my lab. So I'll start out by letting you guys know I am a marine turtle specialist at Gumbo Limbo Nature Center down here in South Florida. And I work in their sea turtle conservation program, and I do beach monitoring. So I'll monitor focus beaches for sea turtle activity. I also work with a number of different animals at our nature center because we have a big aquarium and everything, and also a sea turtle rehabilitation center. And I'll go into all that in a little bit. But I'm also a part of the CMed lab at Nova Southeastern University, and CMed stands for Conservation, Movement, and Ecosystem Dynamics. And I'll also go into what I do there, but it's also good to note, because a lot of people are like, oh, you work with turtles and sharks, like, wow, Well, a lot of marine biologists usually have multiple disciplines. So it's really, really good to broaden your disciplines. So that's my first little bit of advice right off the bat. But I'll go into a little bit more of what I do at Gumbo Limbo Nature Center. So we are a little nature center, and I actually started there as a camp counselor. So I started in more the education department, worked with the summer camps there. And then when a position opened for the marine turtle specialist, I hopped on that opportunity and got the job. So what I do now is monitor sea turtle activity on our beaches, and I mark the nests on the beach. So if you're ever in South Florida during in between the months of March and October, that is our sea turtle nesting season. So you'll see a bunch of stakes out there with tape around them. Just know that that is a sea turtle nest, and sea turtles are federally protected. So they are endangered species, and it's me and my team's job to make sure we're doing everything possible to make sure these animals have a sustainable future. We also do a bunch of different educational programs for sea turtles and respond to a lot of stranding calls. So if a sea turtle washes up on the beach, or if a sea turtle is in danger and they call our stranding phone, I'll go out and me and my team go out and we help take care of those kind of calls. And a lot of people ask, like, what's the hardest part of your job? One, I absolutely love my job. Like it's just so fun. But I will say for me, the hardest part is waking up in the morning because fun fact, sea turtles do all of their nesting at night. So what we do is go out in the morning right before sunrise. So right now that's around 6 a.m. Not the best morning person, but once I start seeing these turtle nests, it wakes me right up. But I would say that's definitely the hardest part of the job, but you easily get over that. But yeah, so in the slides that you guys are looking at now, that's a completed sea turtle nest. So when we go out in the morning before sunrise, we're driving down the beach in our beach vehicles, and we're looking for the crawls from the sea turtle. So like I said, sea turtles nest at night because it's a lot safer for them. They don't really like they like privacy on the beach. So nighttime is the best time to do that. So what we do is go during the sunrise, we'll look for their tracks. So if their tracks have a nice big like fluffy mound of sand at the top of their tracks, we know that there's a nest there. And that's where we will put our stakes around and make sure to keep it nice and safe. And a lot of people ask how long till the eggs hatch or till we see little babies coming up. And it takes about a little bit less than 2 months. So 45 to 55 days is their incubation period. So we'll start seeing little baby tracks come out of their nests in about 45, 55 days. The other picture that you guys are seeing, that is of a nesting sea turtle mama. We do educational programs where we'll take the public out. Only a certain number of people will take them out, and we'll look for a nesting sea turtle. And this is what we see. You can see, if you look really closely, you can actually see her eggs being dropped into the sand. And I've been working here for this is my 4th year, and it never gets old seeing a sea turtle nest. Like they're basically dinosaurs, and it's just amazing. But another thing to note, you'll see in this little video going, we have red lights. So sea turtles actually can't see the color red because in the ocean, once you get about 20 to 30 feet down, the color red disappears. And if you're like a snorkeler or a scuba diver, you know this, like if you have something red on, once you guys go down, it turns kind of gray. So sea turtles, they haven't adapted to, they don't really need to see the color red because they're all the way or always in the water. But yeah, so we use red lights because the white lights are actually, or just regular flashlights, they're bad for sea turtles because they can deter them from nesting. They can also, fun fact, sea turtles find the ocean based on what the brightest light is. So historically, before the light bulb, was invented, the brightest light was the ocean or wherever the moon was reflecting off of. So it's really important. We do a lot of work with light monitoring. So we make sure people who live on the beach, they turn their lights off at night during sea turtle season. But yeah, so the red lights are good for the sea turtles. So I know I get questions about that all the time, like, why are we using red light? But yeah, so this first little video,
Oh, I just wanted to jump in and say that I love that fact. Like, it literally made my day. I did not know that they drifted towards the nearest light. Like,
yeah, exactly.
lovely.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's okay. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of like sea turtle research is fairly new because conservation for them really didn't start until around 20 to 30 years ago. And the lifespan of sea turtles, they live a very long time, but they don't reach maturity to be able to reproduce until they're 25 years old. So a lot of the conservation and the research that we're doing now, or that we started doing way back in the 80s, well, not way back, but back in the 80s,
Yeah.
we're just now starting to see results from that conservation. Because if you think about it, those little babies they're probably full grown adults now. So hopefully a lot of the practices that we're doing are securing like a better sustainable future for them. But yeah, so sometimes also the perks of my job is just seeing the sunrise every morning. And that also gets me over my hatred of mornings immediately. But yeah, so the next picture is what we also do at Gumbo in our sea turtle hospital. So we rehabilitate sea turtles. So people will call in saying they have a sick or injured turtle. This particular turtle, I think, suffered from a shark injury, but she was rehabilitated with us for a couple of months, and she has a satellite tag on her back and was ready to go. So our goal is to rescue, rehab, and release these turtles. So that's really fun. It gets me a lot of experience in that like veterinary medical field, and it's nice to be able to be hands-on with all of that. But it's definitely a rewarding part of the job because you see the condition of the turtle when it first comes in. You're just like, wow, like, are you gonna make it? But then as you're, being part of the rehabilitation process and then being able to see those turtles like crawl back out into the water to where they belong is just very rewarding. Let's see what else. All right, so then I'll talk about what I do at the CMed Lab. So CMed Lab is part of Nova Southeastern University, and we do a lot of different things in our labs with turtles and sharks. But particularly what I help with is the shark tagging program. And the shark tagging program is part of the Guy Harvey Research Institute, which is part of Nova Southeastern University. So what we do is actually we'll take school groups out. So middle school to high school, we'll have those kids help us with the tagging. So we'll do all like the actual handlings of the sharks and everything, but the kids do get a lot of experience with tagging the sharks and being able to measure the sharks. So it's a really cool experience for them. This is also my first year in grad school with this lab was my first time tagging a shark and first time really like touching a shark or anything, and it was just like mind blowing.
Did you have any initial fears or?
No, honestly, like I'm like that. A lot of people get into the field to get over their fears, but I was like all in immediately. Like if I was probably at 10 years old, I would have jumped into the water next to the.
That's powerful.
Yes. But yeah, so that is really fun. The research that we do with that lab the things that we do with that lab goes directly towards research involving genetics, stable isotopes, which is just a fancy word for saying, figuring out what the shark's eating. We also take a lot of data on their like how much they've grown, if they do get recaptured or anything like that. And the purpose of the tags is basically if a fisherman catches this shark, or if someone snorkeling or scuba diving sees the tag on the shark, they'll be able to take the tag number down and then call us, and we'll be able to know like where this shark is really moving. So that's a really cool part of my lab. And there's a couple other pictures of like, yep, so me tagging the shark. So for my lab specifically, we use cow tags. So if you ever have been on a farm or like grew up on a farm, you'll see the little things in the cow's ears. We actually use those for the shark. We put them in the top of their dorsal fin because they don't feel that at all. So it's not like harmful for the shark. They don't like feel pain from punching the little tags in them. So it's like the perfect place to place the tags, and it's less likely for it to fall off either. But yeah, you can also see some of the kids that we work with, they help with measuring the shark. So yeah, it's really cool and it's really fun. And sometimes there definitely are days where you get 0 sharks, you're out on the water for like 5+ hours, and it happens. Not all fishermen get their fish all the time, so we definitely don't get sharks every trip, but definitely is, even if just 1 shark, you're happy. But yeah.
So Carly, can you tell us a little bit more about where you grew up and how you got here today?
Yes, happily. So I am originally from Detroit, Michigan, and people are always just absolutely mind blown that I'm from like a little like far away from the ocean. If you guys know where Michigan is, that is like far away from the ocean. I grew up with the Great Lakes around me. The Great Lakes are amazing, but nothing like the ocean, in my opinion. But yeah, so I grew up in Detroit. Fun fact, I was homeschooled actually. My mom homeschooled me from 1st grade up until my 1st year in high school. So I give my mom a whole lot of credit for my intelligence, or at least the basis of my intelligence. And then a lot of people also wonder, like, how did I even really get hooked on sharks? And I will say sharks have been my absolute favorite animal since I was at least 5 or 6 years old. I vividly remember I was at a book fair with my mom, probably like one of the homeschool book fairs or something. And I remember setting eyes on a book that said sharks. All it said was just sharks. Had a big picture of a shark on it. I just randomly was just like, I want to read that book. And it was, like an easy read, like one of those really thin ones. And I was just begging my mom. I was like, can you get that book for me? I just want to read it. She finally got it for me. And from then on, like all the books that I would check out of the library were sharks. I was immediately hooked. I really don't even know like what it was about sharks. I think it started out more of a fear, like, oh, these are scary, like, oh, I want to learn, and made me want to learn more about them. And that fear turned into curiosity, and then immediately curiosity was just it took over the fear. But yeah, so I moved to South Florida for my undergraduate studies. So I went to Florida Atlantic University, and I knew, like, growing up in Michigan, I hated the cold. I absolutely hated it, and I was like, I'm not staying in Michigan for school. I'm going to move far away to somewhere warm. So I did, and I went to Florida Atlantic University for to receive my bachelor's. And something that some people in the science field don't really know about, or know about me, and it's not super common in the science field, is that I was an athlete. So I was a collegiate swimmer. I've been swimming. Well, I did swim ever since that I was 5 years old. So I was an athlete for most of my life, and it's been a huge part of my life. And let's see. So naturally, yes, I was a swimmer, but also it kind of prepared me a little bit for the field that I'm getting in, just because of how, what's the word? I was back when I started swimming, there was not a lot of Black women swimming at all. And it was I was always like breaking stereotypes, you know, like Black girl loves sharks and Black girl is swimming. And it's like, what? But yeah, so that kind of helped prepare me for being in a not so diverse field. But also being an athlete, just I used to think that it was holding me back from a lot of things, especially in college, because in college you're supposed to be getting a lot of your field work experience, like going into labs and blah blah, figuring out what you're trying to do. But my life was controlled by NCAA, and I couldn't really do a lot of that. So initially, I would think, you know, this is holding me back, but also I wasn't about to just stop swimming. So from that, I actually am so grateful for being an athlete because I learned so many life skills that you wouldn't learn from not being an athlete. For example, time management. Like I had to swim twice a day every other day, and that only gives you a couple of hours at the end of the day to really get all of your work done, to even like go to school and do classes. But I overcame that, and because of that, my time management is a whole lot better probably than the normal average person. But I also learned teamwork, because even though it is like a individualized sport, uh, one person is part of a whole team. So it teaches you how to work with other people, how to even be a leader. And it also just helped me become a hard worker. Being a swimmer or just being an athlete in general, I'm sure others will relate. You're always working towards a goal. And because of that, I always try to have like goals in my life where that I'm working towards. And that kind of helps me keep on task. Let's see what else. But yeah, so even swimming, yeah, you know, I just love the water. So a lot of my hobbies nowadays include water hobbies. So I like to snorkel and scuba dive. And also from being an athlete, I'm really into fitness now. So since I finished being an athlete, it was kind of like, oh, like what do I do now? And it was kind of like, well, let's get into something else. So fitness is a really big part of my life. All right, so let's go into some of the field work that I've done. So my very first field experience was the summer right before my senior year. And I did a program called Field School Niagara, where I was living on a tall ship called the US Brig Niagara for about 3.5 weeks. Now, looking at this, you'll be like, wow, that's a pirate ship. And it actually was a ship that was used during the Civil War, I believe. And clearly it was remodeled, or just, you know, remodeled and remodeled. I can't think of the other word. But yeah, so that was really my first time being in the field. I knew that I wanted field experience, or I knew that I wanted my career to be field focused. So I was like, all right, let me see if I actually like field work. I will say the very first week of me being on the ship, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I remember calling my mom and being like, all right, this is, we're sleeping in hammocks. Like, there's a little toilet. What is it? But quickly got over that, because I'm pretty sure that's going to be everyone's initial thought to something different, because it was very different. And if you do think that you're leaning towards going into field work, just make sure you try it first. Make sure you like it. But yeah, so this program was really, really cool because I was able to do a lot of field work along the Great Lakes. So it was based in Erie, I think Erie, Pennsylvania. And we started out in Lake Erie, and we would sail to different, throughout like the different lakes. And what we would do there is learn different microbiology techniques. We do a lot of freshwater fish surveys. So we would do steining and trawling, which is just a fancy way of saying we're throwing like big nets into the water and surveying the type of fish that we're seeing. A really cool thing about the Great Lakes that a lot of people probably don't realize is that they have really awesome shipwrecks. And because the Great Lakes is freshwater, those shipwrecks are like perfectly preserved because the salt water isn't breaking them down constantly. So when you go to those shipwrecks, it's just like going straight to that ship, like going right back in time. And we were able to do some snorkeling at those wrecks. And I will note that it was July when we did the snorkeling, and the water was like 60 degrees, maybe 50. It was like 50 something. So we were wearing like dry suits, and it was the coldest water I've ever been in, but it was still pretty cool. And another cool thing that I did there was I learned how to build a ROV, which is just a remote operating vehicle. We named our ROV Nemo. And it was cool because I actually got to work on like the actual wiring and everything for the motors. Like all of this was completely our design. I made a little attachment for, I was working in a group, that's why I'm saying we, I don't get all the credit, but made a little attachment for my GoPro, and our little Nemo was definitely swimming around, and it was really cool because I'd never really worked with electronic boards and like trying to stick wires together. That just, all that goes kind of completely over my head, but it was really cool to get an experience like that. Let's see. All right, so then the next time I really got into the field was during my senior year at FAU. I did a whole semester at another school or another campus on FAU called Harbor Branch, and it's basically a huge marine biology research center. And it was just like heaven. Like you immediately go there. I stayed on dorms there, and I remember seeing like random like baby alligators. Like it was just nature all all around me, and it was just really cool. And the campus itself was right on the water. It was a little bit north Florida, so I think it was Fort Pierce. So the Indian River Lagoon was right in our backyard, and I would go to class, and after class I'd go sit, eat my lunch, and see a couple of dolphins swim by in the canal. It was pretty cool. It's also where I got firsthand experience on actually creating my own research project and creating a whole poster presentation, which is what you guys see in the top right. But yeah, basically the entire semester was field-based. So I was always in the water for my labs, catching fish and IDing fish. And we also did a course called Ocean Exploration, which was my first time on a whole research vessel. So that was a little bit, I remember thinking like, all right, like research vessels, field work, that's what I want to do in my career. So this was like the best experience to really go to pursue that further, and once again see if I actually really like it. But yeah, so that whole research vessel expedition, I think we were out on sea for about 3 days, and we didn't sleep in hammocks, so that was nice. But we did a lot of sampling. So I learned how to use like dredges, which we kind of sift through to see what kind of sand is at the bottom. I will say that was my least favorite part. I wasn't interested in sand and sediment, but it's always good to, figure out what you do and what you don't like. We did a lot of plankton trawls, which is what you're seeing in that first top picture. But yeah, it was just an experience being on a research vessel, and there's a whole lot of different mechanics, learning how to deploy certain equipment. And the project that me and my partner came up with was looking at the organisms that live in sponges. So if you look at that bottom left picture, that's just a bunch of sponges. This began my hatred towards sponges because with our project, we had to cut into all these sponges and look at what's living in there. What was living in there was really cool, like bunch of little like they're called shrimp. I can't remember the name of them, but they make little like popping sounds underwater. Yeah, and one of them got me, and that was not fun. And then interesting thing about sponges is that they are covered in these tiny microscopic kind of like little hairs called wow, I just lost the entire word. But they're basically, it's like tiny shards of glass. That's the only way I can describe it. And we had to wear gloves while cutting these, but sometimes the gloves really weren't keeping all the little particles out. And that just, I hated sponges from then on. Yeah. And then also IDing, I could go on and on about these sponges. But anyway, the project turned out to be really well. But it was just a good, even though it wasn't like something that I really wanted to do, it was still experience with thinking of a research question, thinking of how you're actually going to carry out this research, and then having an end result, like presenting your research. And it was different than just like a regular research paper. It was a lot more fun because if you could see in the other pictures, there's a lot of pictures on our poster. But yeah, that was definitely one of the experiences that confirmed that I would definitely be pursuing a career in the field, especially on the boat. I really like being on boats. That's what I've also learned. Let's see. So my most recent, another really fun shark-related program that I did, field program that I did, was actually a little bit over a year ago with a program called Field School Miami. And this was also my first time seeing women shark biologists. And those two women actually have been my mentor over the past year now, Julia and Catherine. I'm sure you guys are watching. But yeah, like that was my first time being exposed to females actually being like shark biologists, and in addition to that, running a whole field program off of a research boat. And you might be saying like, oh, like, okay, what's the big deal with that? I'm going to say it again. It's my first time encountering this, or even really seeing this happening in my field. And I will say there's not a ton of women in this field, especially in the field like shark biology world, because you know they look at women like, oh, you can't handle a shark, or oh, like you can't really do a lot of the physical things required to keep a shark, to tag a shark, things like that. But they definitely were physically capable of doing these things. But let's see. But yeah, so that was where I was exposed to a lot of different ways to do shark research. So with my lab, I was only introduced to a certain way of catching the scientific long lines, which is how we catch the sharks. But with this program, I was exposed to a whole lot of different ways that you can scientifically catch sharks. Keela, did you have a question?
Oh, yes. First, I just wanted to thank you for like sharing all of that, and also, especially because I'm heading into college next year, and I've always been fascinated by marine biology, but I haven't really had access to an ocean living in Arizona my whole life. So it's been really like refreshing to hear your story and how you went from somewhere that's like kind of landlocked to somewhere that isn't. But I wanted to check in with Casey to see what questions we have coming in.
Absolutely. All right. We have a lot of questions coming in. Again, I want to echo what Akila just said, Carly. Sharing this work and your experiences so far is truly, truly amazing. So we have a lot of folks that are joining us today, both on Zoom, but also on YouTube Live. So I'm going to see how many questions I can throw at you for right now before we continue on. So let's see. Can you tell us what your favorite shark is?
Yes. My favorite shark, I feel like my favorite shark kind of changes sometimes, but right now my favorite shark is the nurse shark because they're literally like little puppies. They were also the focus of my study, my thesis study. So I've worked with them a lot, and they just, I don't know, a lot of people think they're boring, but they're just so cute.
I agree with you. Nurse sharks, they turned to be my favorite a few years ago. So I love them. So another question, we're getting a lot of these actually. Have you ever been bit by a shark?
No, I've actually never been bit by. I've been bit by a stingray, funny enough, but not a shark, not a shark. And I don't plan on being bit by a shark.
Let's see. So we have a lot of questions here. So let's see here. So we have a lot of budding marine biologists that are tuning in today, which we're so excited to see. And they do have a lot of question about advice. So I know we are going to get to that a little bit more, but could you maybe specifically, do you have any advice for creating a research question or project?
Yeah, so that actually is like one of the, or was one and still is one of the things that I struggled with, was because in science it's very you have to almost ask the right questions, if that makes sense. But I guess the whole scientific method, you first start with an observation. So like, what are you seeing? And then you kind of go into, what do people not know about this certain thing? And what do you think is something, I guess, interesting about this thing that you would want to go more into? And then you kind of do your background research. You kind of go into like literature reviews, see what other people have done on this specific topic. And from all of that, you kind of create a question like, all right, so people haven't really asked this question, they've asked these types of questions. I'm gonna ask, like, you kind of go off of what other people have like, you go off of different findings, and you figure out, like, all right, what have you all not discovered yet, or what questions haven't been asked, I guess is the right way to say it. But yeah, it's definitely that's why a lot of researchers actually collaborate. So that's why they talk with other people. So that's why it's good to have friends in this field, and it's good to have like colleagues and people that you're always talking to, because you'll everyone bounces questions off of each other, everyone gets ideas from each other. And specifically for my project, I developed research questions based off of an observation that someone else gave me. So they're like, we're seeing this and we want to develop like a research project from this. And you kind of, like I said, you observe first, and then you kind of just ask your own questions like, oh, like, I wonder if, and then after you ask those questions to yourself, you kind of you make them in a way that's more scientific.
Excellent. Thank you. So, a couple more questions before we continue on, because I know a lot of questions coming in you are going to answer in our next little section. So, one question that I do have, Abby asks, what made you choose FAU?
So, FAU was close to the ocean, and they had a good marine biology program. I actually had done a lot of research on the Harvard branch program that I told you guys about that I did, and that program definitely spoke to me. And also, our campus is located about 3 miles away from the beach, so that also went into my decision. But also, like I said, I was a swimmer, and I had gone on a recruiting trip to that school, and it really, FAU is like one of those really, really, really diverse schools. So I felt comfortable there when I was on the campus. Like, it wasn't like, wow, like I'm the only one here who looks like me. It was very refreshing. It was, like I said, very, very, very diverse. So that also went into my decision.
Excellent. And one more question before we continue on. We know you're talking about sea turtles today, and you're talking about your work with sharks. If you had to choose one to work with, which would you choose and why?
I definitely would choose sharks, because sharks are my first love. The sea turtle, that is hard, because what I've done so far with my work or with my career at Gumbo Limbo, and solely just the people that I've worked with. What I also have learned is sea turtle researchers and sea turtle scientists are just like really cool people. Not saying that shark biologists aren't, but like I don't know what it is, but they're just a different they're a different type of scientists. They're a whole lot more like laid back and like not wearing shoes and walking around. But I definitely would choose the sharks just because that's what I'm more passionate about, and that's also like that's just like the main focus of my research. So.
Excellent. All right, Akila, back over to you. Everybody, keep those questions coming in. We will have one more break for questions before we wrap up.
Yes, just to echo Casey, thank you for all the great questions and the great answers. Can you tell us a little bit more about your current research?
Yes. So my current thesis is examining the effects of provisioning tourism, provisioning tourism on nurse sharks in Belize. That sounded like a lot of big words, but provisioning tourism is the act of feeding sharks for tourist benefits. So in Belize, well, before I even go into that, the program that I worked with was called Frontier, and it's a volunteer program that I heard about. They had reached out to Nova Southeastern University and said that they had like they had opportunities to do field work abroad, and you can also, and they also offered like a place to do research and to do your thesis. And going back to how I was a little chained by the NCAA and couldn't really travel much for research, I immediately was like, I want to travel abroad. I want to go somewhere and do research because I never really got to do that. So this presented the absolute, like the best opportunity to do that. So they presented me with some research that they had been working on involving tourism. There's a specific area on the island called Key Coctor in Belize. It's called Shark Ray Village, and it's where tour guides take tourists to feed the nurse sharks and the stingrays there. And they just feed them and keep them around for the tourists to take pictures in. They go in and snorkel with them. So yeah, so I developed some research questions, and basically what I was trying to figure out is what exactly are the effects of this practice. So no one had really done any research in that area before because there are a lot of provisioning tourism sites around the world. Like shark provisioning is easily like probably one of the top things to do in a lot of different tropical areas. But yeah, so you can see a picture of me setting up cameras. So what I was doing was trying to figure out like, are these sharks staying around in the area where they're feeding, or are they moving away once the feeding's done? And that word is called habituation. So are they habituated to the area? Are they kind of abandoning their normal what is it called? Their normal behaviors and just relying on this area for food and not being like a normal nurse shark and going around to find their own food. But yeah, and this program it also exposed me to a lot of things that I didn't think about going into the field. So a lot of scientific programs that are abroad, you're probably going to be living in a very sustainable way. I don't know if you guys can see the picture of the base camp I was living at. But yeah, there's no electricity, there's no running water. This base camp was right in the middle of a mangrove island, so there are mosquitoes everywhere. But like I said, it's this very sustainable way to live, and I also adapt very easily. So after a week, I was good. But it definitely makes you appreciate a lot of the things that we have here, like AC and running water. Like I'm pretty sure for the toilet, we had to like throw a bucket of water into the toilet to flush it. So, but yeah, so it just exposed me to a lot of different things. And just keep in mind, if you do want to go abroad for science, for field work, you're probably going to be living in a very simple way. And if you, like I said, I didn't know that I liked that simple way until I actually went there, but you won't really know until you try it. So that's my advice on that. But yeah, so basically these sharks in Shark Ray Village, where I was doing my research, you can see the next picture. is what it would look like once a boat came in and started feeding. So it was just like a giant ball of nurse sharks, just going around in circles, eating the food being thrown in. And as you can see, they're tourists, just they can get in the water, they can get really close to the sharks, and they can have a lot of photo opportunities. So the main part of my project was looking to see if this tourism activity had any effect on their behavior. So you can see in the first little video that's playing, that's me taking tallies or notes underwater. So my project involved a lot of observation. So I'm tallying down like what I'm seeing, what kind of behaviors that I'm seeing, and kind of how long these things are going on, and that goes into the stats later on, kind of telling me their behaviors being, they shift their behaviors or they change their behaviors based on this particular event. So some of those events were the boats coming in. So the boat engine sounded like a dinner bell to them. So as soon as the boat engine comes in, the sharks kind of come out and immediately go towards that boat. But you can see why I love nurse sharks. They're so cute. They're like little puppies going around. And they're also like one of the sharks that they are like puppies. They're very chill. They are like, if I would ever recommend like a first encounter with a shark, it would be a nurse shark, because they lay on the ground. That's mostly what they do. Let's see. But yeah, the field work was fun. I got to work on a lot of different projects with Frontier, because my project wasn't the only thing that was going on there. They had a bunch of different projects like manatee projects, coral and fish surveys. So these are a couple of pictures of the corals that I would see. This was my favorite part of, like, one of my favorite parts of Belize, because they have the second largest barrier reef in the world, second to the Great Barrier Reef, but they have the largest living reef. So unfortunately, the Great Barrier Reef is no longer living, which means or lots of parts of it is no longer living, which means the coral isn't actively growing and isn't actively like reproducing and growing more like coral structures. But in Belize, there are parts that are still growing, and the reefs here just were absolutely breathtaking. Like, a lot of these pictures, they like don't even do it justice. But another big part of Belize is their land tourism. So the top right picture, that's actually from some cave diving that I did while I was there. And Belize has rainforests. They have like all types of beautiful scenery there. But I was able to experience the land-based tourism there, which is really cool because they have caves. You can see like the monkeys in the trees while you're walking through the rainforest, and it is just an overall cool experience. And if you do have the chance to travel abroad for any reason, it gives you a whole new perspective on, like, most of the times countries like that, you come back and you start appreciating a little bit more of the things that you have here, but also you're exposed to a completely different culture. Like, the culture there is so laid back compared to where I live in South Florida. Like, I'm pretty sure 80 to 90% of the time I was there, I didn't wear shoes because no one really wore shoes. You just kind of walk around the street. Like, there's not a lot of cars. And just their perspective on certain things is a whole lot more, they think things are a lot more precious, and they appreciate things a lot more than we do here in America. Definitely will say that. They look at their coral reefs and they say, we want to make sure that these don't die. Like, we are protecting these as best as we can. And just their whole outlook on the environment and everything is just really cool. And I would definitely recommend traveling abroad if you are able to, or if that's something that you think you would want to do. Let's see. So another thing that I definitely want to go into is an essential part of my journey my family, like I have like a huge family for one, but my parents have been like a huge part of my whole journey. And when I was in Belize, they actually came and visited because, you know, any excuse to come visit tropical island. But they come, they support me. My dad got his scuba diving certification just so he could scuba dive with me in Belize. So it's yes. So it's just like it's absolutely amazing because my parents, like my mom's a musician and my dad's a lawyer. So where did I come from? That's what a lot of people are like, what happened with that? They thought I was gonna be the lawyer in the family. But being able to expose them to these experiences, being able to educate them on the environment and the things that I'm passionate about, and just seeing how they have changed the way that they look at certain things has just been amazing. And then I do have a little brother. I just didn't put his picture up there, but he's also super supportive. And it's just my family is awesome. How about that? And they encouraged me as I was going. Like when I said I want to work with sharks, they weren't like, "You're weird." No, they were like, "All right, so we're gonna figure out what you can do to make sure you work with sharks." And I told them I don't want to stay in Michigan for school, and they said, "All right, where you want to go that has good marine biology programs?" And that support is just that's something I cherish a lot. And also getting to Belize, it wasn't free, but instead of like grants or like scholarships, things like that, I actually fully funded that trip with a GoFundMe. And yeah, so a GoFundMe and just all types of support from my family, from friends. That entire trip was paid for just through that. So having a good support system is super important. And like parents, like if you're looking at your kids like, oh, like there's not a lot of money in marine biology, or like maybe you should do something else, try and be a little bit more supportive because that support goes a long way. Definitely goes a long way. But
That warmed my heart. That's awesome. So here at EarthEcho, we believe that we can act now for a sustainable future. Can you tell us a little bit about how your work contributes to that sustainable future?
yes, definitely. So especially with the sea turtles that I work with, another interesting fact is that every single sea turtle that we have in our hospital and that we get in our hospital has plastic in their stomach. They've eaten plastic, it's there. So the pictures that I have on the left, the first one at the top is I did a necropsy, which is same as like an autopsy, but on an animal. I did a necropsy of a little washback sea turtle. So it was about as big as my fist is in that picture. And in that little cup, what I found all through its stomach and its intestines were little pieces of plastic, which is most likely the reason why that sea turtle passed away. And on the bottom picture is what I scooped out of one of the tanks that I walked by, and I was like, "What is in this tank?" Turns out this turtle pooped out all of this plastic, and you can see how big and like kind of sharp some of that plastic is. And it was a juvenile loggerhead, so around like maybe like 50 pounds or so. But still, like and throughout that entire week, she continued to poop out more and more plastic. So from that, I'm trying to, and Gumbo Limbo in general, we're trying to get people to reduce their use of plastic, reduce their use of single-use plastic, really. The easiest way to do that is making sure you're not using like plastic forks, plastic knives, things like that, or making sure you properly recycle. That's really a big thing, is properly recycling, making sure, you know, when you're on a beach, don't just leave your stuff everywhere. Just make sure you're picking up after yourself when you're on the beach or even anywhere, because essentially everything leads to the ocean. Everything is going to get washed into the ocean somehow, or picked up by a bird, or go into the sewage system. But yeah, so us at Gumbo Limbo, we are actively trying to encourage more people to refuse single-use plastic and just reduce your single-use plastic use. And then with the sharks, all of the research that I do, that my lab does, it all goes towards having a sustainable shark population, because sharks are essential for the ocean. They are one of the top predators in the ocean, and if you take away that top predator, a lot of not good things happen in the ocean when you take that top predator away. So all the work that we do in my lab, and that even with the tourism stuff, making sure that we understand our human interactions with these sharks keeps them safe, keeps them, they are a long-lived animal. So, and they don't reproduce like 500 sharks at one time. Usually it's like 2 to 5. It takes them a couple years to get old enough to start reproducing themselves. So being able to protect that population is essential, and all of the research, like I said, in my lab and my program goes towards having a sustainable shark population to keep our oceans healthy.
That's great. Thank you for all the work you do. And now let's check in again with Casey to see what questions we have coming in. Casey, you're on mute.
Thank you. Carly, I was saying there are so many questions coming in. We are most likely going to have you coming back because we're running so close on time. In fact, we've gone over time, but I do want to make sure some of these questions are answered. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to your parents. The chat space is blowing up with everybody saying how amazing your parents are. So
they are amazing.
I think it's really great that you gave them a little platform, and I love that advice for parents out there. So one resounding question that we're seeing in a lot of places right now is, if you could choose a job other than what you do now, what would you want to do?
Let's see. I think that I would, since I've gotten so much into fitness, I would become a personal trainer. Yeah, for sure, because it's fun for me to get other people motivated, and kind of goes back to me being an athlete. Being able to do that would definitely be pretty fun.
Excellent, excellent. And then we also have folks asking, when you go to grad school, would you suggest the thesis track or the non-thesis track?
That is a good question. So, thesis track, non-thesis track, you still have a master's degree. That's going to be the first thing that I say, because when you're applying for jobs, they're not really going to look at, I really don't even think you can put anywhere, I have my master's and I did a thesis. It's, do you have a master's degree or not? So it depends on if you actually enjoy doing research, or if you would just want to do more like literature review. For me, I enjoy doing research, so I knew I wanted to do a thesis. For other people, I know that they might not enjoy doing like hands-on research and having to do their own, doing their own work type thing. But the non-thesis option is equally as valid. Like you're just doing more literature review. You can still work in labs, like you can still do field work. It might not be directly towards like a thesis that you're doing, but it's all the same. It all counts. And the non-thesis option, if anything, that takes a lot less time than a thesis. So
perfect, excellent. Now we do have a lot of folks asking kind of basic biology and life history questions about sharks, sea turtles, and even coral reefs sprinkled in there. And I'm just noticing our staff on YouTube, which I want to give them a shout out. Thank you for using that chat space. The folks that are asking about coral reefs, we do want to point out that we have partners at Coral Restoration Foundation. CRF is what they're known as, and they are also based in South Florida, just like Carly and myself. They are having a virtual Coral Palooza this Saturday. It is a live event, so you can go to coralrestoration.org to find out more about that. So I did just want to vocally say that, so everybody out there does. If you have interest in coral reefs, Coral Palooza is definitely something to check out. We do have another question about getting experience and financially getting assistance, or we understand that some of these things can be quite expensive, not only schooling, but even the field school itself. So do you have any words of advice about financial assistance for students tuning in out there?
Yeah, if there's a program that you want to that you have interest in, that you want to participate in, first thing you should do is look to see if they give out any scholarships. With the field school program, where I learned like the different methods of shark research, I received a scholarship for that paid for half of the expenses that I would have had to pay for. But definitely look to see if they have scholarships, and if they don't, and if you are like super like I need money for this program, you can reach out like I did to family members, say like I'm super passionate about this and trying to raise like this amount of money. Maybe you can try and raise like half of the money and maybe start a GoFundMe, something like that. And then also look for outside scholarships. There are a ton of scholarships out there, and just like applying for as many as you can. I will say that that is something that I kind of wish that I did a little bit more of, is like more scholarship applications. But there are a ton of scholarships out there, and there's a lot of people willing to give you money towards something that you're really passionate about. So definitely researching scholarships and researching certain programs that will help you fund your field work or field program.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to say again, so many questions that we have for you. We cannot possibly answer them. We would be online for another hour. So I think I'm going to wrap with this one last question that we've had several people ask. So you did mention that it would be detrimental if sharks were to go away as top predators. Mm-hmm. So could you explain that a little bit more? What would happen to our oceans if sharks disappear?
Yeah, so a good example, I think there was some research that I read from a couple years ago. There's a certain type of shark population that was basically fished out. Like there were not many sharks left in that area. So what ended up happening is that shark's prey, which were a certain type of ray, absolutely like they just took over that area because there were no sharks there to keep that population in check. So what sometimes will happen is that the prey population will take over, and from that, the prey actually will eat, like, for example, if there's like a lot of mollusks in the area, the prey is going to eat all those mollusks because there's not anything to regulate that population. So from that, the mollusks that are like helping clean the ocean, there's not a lot of those left. And it's just like a basically top-down effect. So sharks, they help keep like sick populations in check. So if there's any like sick or injured, well, not injured, but if there's like sickly animals around, like sharks, a lot of people don't realize this, but some sharks are kind of lazy. They'll go more for the sickly animal than like the lively one. But yeah, they keep those populations in check. And like I said, it's always like a top-down effect. If you remove the predator, the prey has more of an opportunity to take over. And we don't want that to happen because usually the prey overtakes like something else that's very essential to the environment.
Excellent. Very well said. Thank you, Carly, so much. I'm going to toss it over to Akila. Again, lots of questions here. So Carly, we just might have to invite you back.
I wouldn't mind that.
Neither would I. Awesome questions, everyone. So lastly, Carly, do you have any words of advice for people out there, for students out there specifically?
Yeah, so basically, like, the biggest thing that I've learned in this field is that the biggest obstacle to anything that you want to do definitely can be yourself. And make sure that you are, make sure that you overcome like yourself, if that makes sense. So always do Sorry,
You're
there's like a
totally
lot going in
fine.
my brain.
Totally
But
fine.
that's just like the first thing I could think of is like overcoming yourself. So if you're passionate about something, go for it. Like, and if someone says like, oh, like, that's cute, like you can't really do that, just tell them no. I'm gonna do this. If you have a passion for something, pursue it. And if you continue having that passion, you literally can do whatever you want. So that's gonna be my biggest advice. And as like a Black woman in this field, I have had to come over a lot of obstacles, namely people not thinking I'm going to excel. So don't let people tell you, like I said, don't let people tell you what you can't do, especially if it's based on your skin color or gender. Just, you can do whatever you put your mind to.
Amazing advice. Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I wanted to give you a big thank you for joining us today and sharing your journey.
You're welcome.
And for everyone tuning in, you can follow Carly's work online, and she was even kind enough to share her email. So definitely email if you have any questions that weren't answered during this.
Yeah.
And then, okay. And thank you to all of our participants. Be sure to stay connected with EarthEcho on our social media channels. Visit earthecho.org to find out more information about all of our exciting programs, including upcoming virtual events just like this one. And we also wanted to thank our founding sponsor, Raytheon Technologies, again for their support of women in STEM. And on behalf of EarthEcho International, thank you for joining us and keep exploring. Thank you again, Carly. This was awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you guys.